as the beginning of long line of introducers that will eventually lead to the ambassador. So I would like to start with the Dean of International Studies, Gilles Bousquet.
Thank you very much. It's going to be a series of introductions, but we have a very distinguished guest tonight, and I'm happy that we can take the time to properly introduce him and put his action in context. I want to welcome all of you. It's wonderful to see so many of you tonight, and I want to welcome in particular our distinguished guest, Ambassador Gerardo Muñoz, whom we have the good fortune to have this evening, thanks in large part to LACIS, Latin American, Caribbean, Iberian Studies Program, its director and the staff. We take great pride in the fact that our university has one of the longest traditions of activism, engagement, and service in alleviating suffering around the globe. Perhaps now more than ever, our most crucial challenge is the quest to protect and secure stable, safe, and just lives for every human on Earth. Recognizing that a global public research university of our stature has a responsibility to address these challenges, the Division of International Studies helped to establish the Wisconsin Human Rights Initiative in 2007 to bring together faculty in the humanities, the social sciences, engineering, agriculture, the health sciences, area studies, environmental and legal studies, so that their work and our community can benefit from this collaboration. Headed by Professor Scott Strauss, Associate Professor of Political Science and International Studies, the Wisconsin Human Rights Initiative has a strong mission that seeks to inform policy and action with the best scholarship in the field. Through coursework, research, and programming, the initiative fosters critical thinking about the fundamental concepts about human rights. It seeks to anticipate future human rights challenges and develop connections between civil and political rights and social and cultural rights. At its best, the Wisconsin Human Rights Initiative anchors human rights in detailed knowledge of place and time, building on UW-Madison's strength in any number of disciplines. In this light, your visit, Ambassador Muñoz, couldn't be more appropriate. Before I welcome Steve Stern to provide the Ambassador's formal introduction, let me thank some additional co-sponsors of this evening's event. The World Affairs and the Global Economy Center, WAGE, the Harvey Goldberg Center, the University Bookstore, the Dane County Chapter of the United Nations, and the Wisconsin Human Rights Initiative. Now Steve Stern. As you know, he's presently Vice Provost for Faculty and Staff Programs on campus. But before that, he was Distinguished Chair of the History Department, and before that, Director of LACIS. He specializes in Latin America, studying the ways people cope with problems of power and social conflict. Last August, the National University of San Cristobal de Huamanga in the Republic of Peru conferred on Steve the title of Honorary Professor, Professor Honorario, the highest honorary title that can be conferred. And in regards to Chilean political history, we could not have a more informed person to introduce our speaker tonight. Steve's most recent books are Battling for Hearts and Minds, Memory Struggles in Pinochet's Chile, 1973-1988, and Remembering Pinochet's Chile on the Eve of London, 1998, both books published from Duke University Press. Steve, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the podium.
Thank you, Gilles. You know, the history of Chile is so entangled and intermixed with the history of the United States and with world culture. We think here in the north of 9/11 as a date, but for Chileans, September 11th, 9/11 is indeed quite a date, and they were both on a Tuesday, strangely enough. But of course, the 9/11 of Chile, which refers to the coup that overthrew Salvador Allende in 1973 and installed what came to be the Pinochet dictatorship, was also an event that crisscrossed with the history of the United States, because, as Ambassador Muñoz shows so eloquently in his book, Nixon and Kissinger proved so perhaps surprisingly obsessed with the outcome of the Chilean experiment under Allende. But the symbolism of Chile and its interconnection with the United States began even before that. Chile was the model Alliance for Progress country that was held up as an example in the 1970s. When Allende came into power, CALA, the Community Action on Latin America group that many of you know in Madison, actually began as a solidarity group in solidarity with many Latin American countries and inspired by Chile even before the coup happened, and certainly afterwards was very involved. That crisscrossing of history with international history in Chile continued on, of course, after the Pinochet dictatorship came into power. There were the people who came to be known as the Chicago Boys, who went to Chile and advised on a model. Before our 9/11, the US 9/11, arguably the greatest single act of terrorism on United States soil in the 20th century was the assassination of Orlando Letelier, a former Chilean ambassador, assassinated in Washington, D.C. in 1976, not that far from everything else that's in Washington, D.C., and whose assassination sent out a lot of shockwaves, not only in Chile, but also in the politics of the United States and the Democratic Party during the candidacy of Jimmy Carter, and of course with the senatorial trajectory of Edward Kennedy. Then, moving to more recent times, 1998, when Pinochet was arrested in London, again, that became an enormous precedent in international law about the ways in which crimes against humanity do not constitute a shield for sovereigns of states or a valid function of sovereigns of states. Very, very important event, again, that crisscrossed with international history. For me personally, the year 2004, when the Abu Ghraib photos from Iraq came to be exposed, was a very ironic year, thinking about it in the light of Chilean history, because that was the year that Chile's Truth Commission on Torture, the first Truth Commission on Torture in the world that tried to study a process of torture case by case by case and report on it, was happening in Chile. In a way, the countries had crisscrossed and were moving in opposite directions, in which the Bush administration's immediate reactions and public relations responses to the photographs and the news reports sounded a little bit Pinochetista to the eyes of someone writing a book about Chile, while Chile had arrived in a long journey to facing up to the truth of torture and deciding what to do about it. It's against that backdrop that Ambassador Herado Muñoz has contributed, among the many books that he's written, two very important books just published in 2008. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He's the Chilean ambassador to the United Nations. He is the permanent representative of Chile to the United Nations, but also the chair of the United Nations Peacebuilding Commission. He was, during the period of the Iraq War getting launched, he was the president of the United Nations Security Council in January 2004. Chile was at that time a member of the Security Council, and chairman as well of the Al-Qaeda and Taliban Sanctions Committee of the Security Council during 2003 and 2004, the crucial time when the turn to war happened. 2006-2008, he was also facilitator and vice chairman of the General Assembly Task Force on Security Council Reform. Before that period, he had been the Minister Secretary General 2002-2003 and the Deputy Foreign Minister 2000 to 2002 in the administration of Ricardo Lagos, the President of Chile, and had been earlier ambassador to Chile, from Chile to Brazil.